Hello again, everybody. So, as you can tell by the title of this video, I'm going to go ahead and talk today about the future of the American Western comic book industry as I see it. Been doing a lot of research into it lately. It kind of just snowballed out of nowhere. I made a video talking about a new Valiant Comics Bloodshot figure, which then spawned someone to ask me a question on that video about the current state of Valiant Comics, which got me into looking into Valiant Comics, which got me looking into comics as a whole. Uh, I have not looked into what was going on at DC Comics for several months now, just because I kind of just washed my hands of it and said it's going down the toilet, and it looks like that's exactly what has happened. DC Comics are not selling. The only thing that's barely making them any money is some of their Batman titles. I really don't know what the deal is with Marvel Comics, but Marvel's pretty safe just because of the sheer amount of money that the Marvel Cinematic Universe generates for Marvel Entertainment as a whole. So, and we're going to talk more about that as the video goes on, but I'm going to explain to you what's going to happen or what I see happening uh, over the next several years of comics in the Western comics. So, the goal is always to bring in new readers because, like, it's kind of dark, but people die. Every generation has its select few people who get into reading comics, but also everyone gets old and dies. So you have to be bringing in new readers, and you don't just want new readers, you want committed readers. You don't want like someone coming in to just buy like a comic book here and there or a trade paperback here and there. The goal of the industry for decades upon decades now has been to try and bring in, with each new generation, try to bring in new committed readers who come to the comic book store every week to buy their comics and keep up on their favorite characters and their favorite universes and stuff like that. And this is where the industry has been lacking in recent years. And it's for a lot of different reasons. One of them, of course, is comics have so much more to compete with now in both video games and digital streaming. There's so much entertainment content just readily available at the tap of a finger on a screen or on a remote that it really kind of it's a deterrent. It's a deterrent in a way. It's why go to the comic book store and buy a comic when you could just plop down on the couch and turn something on or to watch or play. So there's always that factor, but there's another factor that the comic book industry, I don't know if they're just ignoring it, if they're ignorant of it and they really just can't see it, or if they just don't want to accept that this is the truth. That truth is the kind of people, the kind of new readers that you want to attract are not children. All right? You want people at least 16 years old. Why? Because you want people who have their own income, who can spend their own money on comics. You want people who are at least grown and independent enough to where if they want to buy a comic, they can drive themselves to the comic book store and spend their own earned money on comics. That's who you need to market it to. And it's not like this hasn't been tried before, but they tried it with the New 52 and Valiant tried it, and we're going to talk about that, both of those things. But with both of those attempts, the New 52 with the New 52 attempt by DC, they got something very wrong. They neglected one key detail, and we're going to talk about it. So, these new readers that we need to bring in, what do they want? Well, everyone wants a good story, out of anything that they read. They want entertaining and interesting characters. And more so, people want a connected universe with lots of world building. They want it to seem small and kind of contained when they first get into it, but they want it, as they read more and more, they want it to grow, because when you have good world building and you have a big interconnected universe of characters and settings and storylines, it makes this thing feel really big and important and worth investing your time and money into. All right, so good story and entertaining, interesting characters are not enough anymore. a key factor is the connected universe and world building aspect. That is extremely important these days. So with the New 52, DC already had a big interconnected complex universe. They had about, let's see, 1985 to 2011. I'm not good at math here, so you're gonna have to give me a second. DC had about 26 years, if not more, of continuity already established. So that right off the bat, that's a turnoff for young people, potential new readers. It's like, hey, do you want to get into reading DC Comics? Well, no, I've got 26 plus years worth of content that I have to catch up on. I don't really want to get into that. So they were like, let's do a giant reboot and start everything over and make it this like very fresh new jumping on point. And that's what the New 52 was. They hit the hard reset button on the DC universe, and they started most everything, not quite absolutely everything, but they started most of everything back over from square one, and gave new potential readers a fresh jumping on point. And this worked with newer potential fans. Older lifelong fans who'd already been reading DC Comics for 20 plus years, they didn't really like it because it pretty much took all of the continuity and lore and backstory that they had just invested their money into for the past, 30 plus years, and it took all that and threw it in the trash. So the older lifelong fans who were already into DC didn't really like the New 52, they didn't really like the changes, they didn't really like the restart, but the sales at the beginning from new readers were booming. But after a year, for sure after a year, it was probably a little bit earlier than that, but for sure once the first year of it had gone by, all of these new readers, they realized the overall price this was going to cost them each month to be into, and they bailed on it. It was 52 monthly titles, and at that point in time, comic books, DC Comics, were running around $2.99 a book. And I'm being fair here because when you buy a comic book the week it comes out, it is considered a periodical and it's tax free. So I really did 52 times $2.99. You get $155.48 a month on comics. Now, do you need to read every single one of these comics to know what's really going on with the DC universe? No. You don't. But DC doesn't tell you that. They don't tell you, hey, these are the key issues, the key series that you need to be reading, and these are just extra fluff. They don't tell you that because that would basically say, hey, buy these, don't buy these, and they don't want to tell people not to buy anything. They want you to feel like you should buy more rather than less. So, you have to think the kind of ideal new readers that they were working on trying to get into this. Like I said, age 16, we're talking about high school and college kids. High school and college kids, because everyone older than that is already, they've already got that generation worth of people, everyone older than that. You're talking about people from like age 16 to 26. Maybe a little bit farther than 26, but you understand what I'm trying to say. People that young don't have $155 to blow on comic books every month, unless they're just for some reason really wealthy. They don't. Because I know this because I was in this group of people. I was 19 years old when the New 52 hit, and I wanted to buy every single one of these comics every month, and I could not afford it. I did not have $155, $156 to blow on comic books. Yeah, I was working. I had a part-time job. I made money, but me being, I'm a 19-year-old kid. I'm a freshman in college. There's other shit I want to do. I want to go hang out with my friends. I want to have money to like take girls out, go hit the bars, whatever, go to parties. Like it costs put gas in my car. Stuff costs money. Asking a high school and college kids to shell out $155 a month, not a year, a month for comics is just ridiculous. And as soon as these newer, younger readers caught on to that, they bailed. And then the older readers didn't like the content, they didn't like the changes. And so it ended up being they had no consumer base left for the New 52. And the bottom fell out of it and it was a complete failure. Now, Let's compare it to a very similar reboot relaunch from a different company, Valiant Comics. I mentioned Valiant Comics earlier and how they're not doing so hot these days. Well, back in 2012, a year after DC did their New 52 reboot, Valiant decided, hey, let's do the exact same thing. Let's reboot our entire comic book franchise, entire comic book shared universe back to square one and start it all over and make a fresh jumping on point for new readers. Valiant was never quite as big as DC or Marvel, and it's arguably very unheard of, or it was. So it did not have much. It had been around since the 90s, but arguably it did not have much of an older fan base for it to disappoint with its relaunch. It was mostly all new readers. On top of that, the content was great. When they did their 2012 relaunch of their entire comic book line, their entire universe, the content was great. They had great writers and great artists working on it. It was really easy to follow and keep up with the continuity. And the reason for that is because it was only 7 comic book series at first, like when it first started. You had X-O Manowar, Bloodshot, Eternal Warrior, Archer and Armstrong, Shadow Man, Quantum and Woody, and Harbinger. Those were the 7 monthly titles to this universe at first. It got bigger as time went on, but at first, with their relaunch to get new readers in, they kept it contained, they kept it concise. It was 7 monthly series, and think about it. If you do 7 times $2.99, you end up with $20.93. That's a big difference from $155. So it's no surprise that from 2012 going all the way up to 2018, Valiant Comics was killing the game because they were winning tons of awards, getting nominated for even more. They had their reader base, their consumer, what's the word I'm looking for? Their fan base and their number of consumers and readers and customers only increased. It was a great relaunch. It was pretty much the exact same thing DC did with the New 52. It was just a smaller amount of comic book series that they were putting out each month at the beginning. They didn't try to go hard in the first year and be like 52 comics a month, $155 a month. No, they said here's 7. Here's arguably $21 a month worth of comics. If you pay that and you read these 7 books a month, you know what's going on in the Valiant universe. You're caught up with everything. So that's really the key here. Let's look at another one. This came from the early 2000s, a little into the 2010s. The Invincible universe. This is a brand new original comic book universe created by Robert Kirkman, the guy that later on did Walking Dead. And this had no prior fan base because this is brand new. And so its fan base is made up of all new readers. It had great content, great stories, great artwork, and once again, it was only 7 series long. And no wonder this was super popular. It was very entertaining to read, and it wasn't too expensive. You want to know absolutely everything that's going on in the Invincible universe? Great. Here's 7 monthly titles, and you're looking at spending about $21 each month to get it all. That's easy. That's manageable. Everyone can do it. So it's no wonder that this was a success. Right now, in the current state of things, the big 2, DC and Marvel, they are each publishing approximately 50 comic books per month, and the price has gone up. The price of an individual issue of a comics book series these days is around $4 to $5 each. So that ends up being $200 to $250 a month if you're trying to read everything. Now, not many people try to read everything, but once again, the point is, like I said before, something that's becoming more and more popular, more and more relevant is the big, collected, interconnected, shared universe. That's what people want. That's what people are focused on. So, people want to make sure that whether it's a movie series, whether it's a comic book series, doesn't matter. People want to make sure that they're reading and or watching and or playing everything that matters to the bigger interconnected universe. DC and Marvel don't tell you which series matter and which do not. Therefore, it's kind of like you either read them all or you risk not learning everything you need to know. And that sucks. People don't want to do that. No one's shelling out $200 to $250 a month for comics, or at least no one in high school or college is. And those are these new readers that you're supposedly needing to attract. Another, like I said earlier about the whole, digital streaming and video games have taken over, and they're, comics have to compete with them. Uh, it's all one and the same. The movies have taken over, especially with you look at something like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You get approximately 2 movies a year, and now with Disney Plus, 2 live action series on Disney Plus each year. It rounds out to approximately 17 to 20 hours of entertainment out of your year, not 17 to 20 hours of your month, year. Less than a day of your year, and is all the time you have to spend to keep up with this story. And if you factor in modern movie ticket prices, which are about $15, and then the cost of a Disney Plus subscription, you're looking at approximately $126 a year, which comes out to about $10.50 a month to keep to watch everything relevant to the Marvel Cinematic Universe and keep up with the overall story of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It costs you less than a day of your time out of each year, and it costs you about $10.50 a month. That's way more manageable. That's more bang for your buck. It just is. All right. I don't know how comics over here being like, hey, our we're DC in our shared comic book universe. If you want to read it and know what's going on, it's going to run you over $100 a month. For $10.50 a month, you can keep up with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So that's what it's up against. That's what the comic book industry is up against. And then just in general, streaming services are more bang for your buck. I talked about having the Disney Plus subscription gets you access to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Well, guess what? I mentioned how right now to keep up with the Marvel and DC comics, you're looking at for sure over $100 a month. And to read everything, you're at 200 to 250. If you wanted to have the big 5 streaming services, which I consider to be Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, Disney Plus, and Prime Video, if you were to have all of them, it would cost you approximately $67 a month. That's still significantly less than what it would take you to read all the necessary comics for the DC or Marvel comic book universes. That's what they're competing against. It's just more bang for your buck from these other avenues of entertainment. So clearly, the price is the problem. How do we lower it? How do we lower the price? Well, comic books cost what they cost to make. The writers and the illustrators have to be paid their wages and their salaries, and then the book has to be, put together, manufactured, printed, distributed. So the cost of creating, distributing, that's all kind of set. That's determined by the market. You know what I mean? So it's not so much so that we're going to bring down, or that you can bring down, the price of the individual comic book. The only thing you can do is bring down the price of what it costs people to read the universe. What is my monthly cost to read what I need to read to keep up with the overall story of this comic universe? And the only way to do that is to sell less comics. And that's ultimately where I see the Western comic book industry going these days. The days of publishing dozens upon dozens of monthly series, they're over for now, for the time being. You can't do it. It's gonna collapse. It's gonna go down. All right. It's gonna strip it down to the bare bones. All right. A-list characters. You're gonna take maybe your top 5 A-list characters. They're gonna get monthly series, and you're gonna throw in a couple team books. That's gonna be about it. Like you saw with the Invincible universe and the Valiant, the initial Valiant reboot launch universe, 7 series. That's really what it is. Right now, DC and Marvel are publishing approximately 50 comic book series a month. They seem to be thinking that if they just flood the marketplace with more content, it'll generate more revenue. And I see why they think that, but it's the law of supply, demand, and price. And just because you increase the supply does not mean that demand goes. Demand is not determined by any kind of economics or mathematical factors. Demand is a psychological thing that occurs within the minds of human beings. You cannot increase demand by just increasing the supply. All right? You can increase demand with marketing, because that's psychological. But marketing and advertisement, because that's psychological. But DC and Marvel just seem to think like if we just write, illustrate, and publish more comic book series, then we'll make more money. No, you won't, because there's no demand to read more. So you're just publishing and creating more shit that people are never going to read. And I mentioned earlier how, let's see here. I mentioned how Marvel, for sure, Marvel Comics is going to be okay because they've got fuck you money. They do. They have fuck you money. They're owned by Disney overall, which has all the money under God. And then on top of that, Marvel Comics is a facet of Marvel Entertainment. Another facet of Marvel Entertainment is the MCU, Marvel Studios. And those movies and those series on Disney Plus, they generate so much income, so much profit, so much revenue that, you know, some of the overflow from that can go to keeping the comic book side of things running. So it's not that they, like with Marvel, and because they have the MCU, it's not that like they're at risk of going down the toilet because they don't have enough money. They're at risk of going down the toilet because how long is this greater company, how long is Marvel Entertainment or Disney going to sustain Marvel Comics when Marvel Comics isn't produced? It's like it's not carrying its own weight. You know, and then you get to DC over here, which DC is owned by Warner, which is now merged with Discovery. It's Discovery Warner, and these new Discovery people, I have a feeling they're going to be looking at this shit like, why should we prop this thing up and keep it alive? No, like strip it down to the point where all that's left of it is what it can self-sustain. You know? Why should we keep propping it up? It's not generating profits. It's not generating goods or services that bring in income and profit. So why should we prop it up with the profits of other things? Like, yeah, it sounds like a good, it's not morally, it sounds like a good idea because it allows more people to keep their jobs and keep working and blah, blah, blah. But it's just like, that's not economics. That's not how that works. So yeah, what I see in the future, next several years to maybe a little over a decade, is for sure Valiant. Image might be okay because Image has never really been a big collected universe type publishing area. Image is where you go to publish your comic if you just have this like indie series that you don't want to turn it into some big franchise. You don't want to build some kind of big complex interconnected world or universe. You just have a story idea and you want to publish it in comic book form. You go to Image. But yeah, like DC, for sure DC I see going this route, and maybe Marvel too. I see them like the comic book side of things is going to get stripped down to the bare bones. It's going to be like you guys are allowed to publish. They're basically going to be like, you guys are on your own. All right, you can publish as many comic book monthly series as the income you bring in from selling comics provides you. So it means if your income, if DC Comics, not DC Entertainment as a whole, not Discovery Warner, if DC Comics is only bringing in enough profits to justify publishing 5 comic book series a month, then that's all you get to publish, is 5 comic book series a month. Keep on the necessary writers and illustrators and editors to publish those 5 monthly series. Everybody else, bye. There's the door. So that's where I see this going. That's just my take on it. If anyone disagrees, please leave some comments below. Let me know what you think. Get a discussion started. But that's where I see this going. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. If you like this video, please hit the like button. That really helps out my channel. If you want to help out the channel and even further, check out some of my other videos and maybe subscribe. But other than that, I'll talk to you guys later.